Welcome to Pub Sports Radio's NFL Futures coverage. We start with the NFC West. The San Francisco 49ers are slight favorites in this division after a very difficult 2020 where they went 6-10. A big part of it is that they have the easiest schedule in the NFL based on opposition forecasted wins. Right now at Bet365, to make the playoffs, they are minus 200. To miss the playoffs, plus 150. Regular season wins sitting at 10.5. The over is at plus 100. The under at minus 130. To win the NFC West, plus 180. To win the NFC, plus 450. To win the Super Bowl, plus 1,200. Kyle Shanahan in year 5 with 2 new coordinators. Offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel, who will be using the West Coast offense. Defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans with a 4-3 scheme. They draft Trey Lance, number 3 overall. Very interested to hear if Babano thinks Trey Lance will be getting snaps this year. Trey Sermon in round 3 out of Ohio State. Size, explosiveness. Elijah Mitchell, another running back in round 6 out of Louisiana. Alex Mack, a center from the Falcons, who will give them a great veteran presence at a very important position. Key losses, Richard Sherman. The 49ers were against the cap. Little did we know that he would get into a major domestic situation that may cost him his career. Jerick McKinnon couldn't stay healthy. Now gone to the Chiefs. Tevin Coleman, declining production, now with the Jets. Jordan Reed called it a career due to health concerns. This team fell sharply last year. 6-10, an ugly season. Injuries were the biggest factor. That week 2 matchup in MetLife Stadium, Bosa, Garoppolo, Mostert catch their cleats in the turf, and campaigns ruined. George Kittle was already on the sideline due to a sprained knee. Very talented starting wide receiver duo with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk on the field for only 6 games due to their own injury issues. They move up from number 12 to number 3 to draft Trey Lance, who had just 1 full year of college against very suspect FCS defenses. Will Garoppolo hold on to the job? 28 starts, missed 23 games over the past 3 seasons, including playoffs. Those are the bad numbers. The good numbers, 24-9 record in games he started. The only NFL quarterback to rank in the top 5 in passing TDs, completion percentage, and yards per attempt in 2019. And whoever it is, being Garoppolo or Lance, will be behind an offensive line that includes 4 first-round picks, 2 perennial Pro Bowl selections in left tackle Trent Williams and center Alex Mack, first-rounder in Laken Tomlinson and Mike McGlinchey, and Aaron Banks, a second-round pick, who was McGlinchey's teammate at Notre Dame. DeMeco Ryans doesn't have a lot of coaching experience in his post-playoff career, but he studied under Saleh, so we can expect the defense to keep its 4-3 base and a heavy zone coverage. Last year, the Niners ranked 5th in the NFL in total defense with Bosa and D. Ford and Sherman missing 40 games due to injuries. This defense could be very, very good. Bosa, Ford, Kinlaw, Armstead. Kinlaw, number 14 pick in 2020. Armstead signs a 5-year, $85 million deal last year, and they combined for just 5 sacks in 2020. Second level in the 4-3 defense, Fred Warner, 5-year, $95 million extension. We're going to see Jason Verrett, former first-round pick, who had a big comeback season as the number 1 cornerback. Babano, how good are these San Francisco 49ers going to be? Do you have action on them? Do you want action on them? What are your expectations? Take it away.
Yeah, Jimmy, with the San Francisco 49ers, this is going to be a team where last year you're going to look at stats, you're going to look at results, you're going to look at defensive numbers, offensive numbers, and you're just going to have to throw them mostly in the garbage can. All right, because of all the injuries this team had last year. It was insane how this team, really on both sides of the football, were completely besieged by injuries. You look at it, they had basically several defensive starters, 7 at one time, that were out starters on the defensive side of the football throughout the course of last year. And obviously things fell apart for this team. They also had Jimmy missed some time. They had to rely on some of their backup quarterbacks like Nick Mullins and company behind him. So there were a lot of absences from that team due to injury. But you look at what they've done in the offseason. I like the Niners a lot in terms of the talent around the quarterback position. We'll start there. You mentioned the offensive line. Getting Alex Mack at the center position, I think, is really good. He's still largely thought of as a top 5-10 center in the NFL, and that was an issue for them last year. Center position was not good, so they've fixed that. They looked at that, the management team, and they plugged that hole very well. In my opinion, Laken Tomlinson, Tom Compton, a great tackle duo with Trent Williams. You mentioned him, and Mike McGlinchey. That should be a good offensive line. That looks like a top 5 or 10 offensive line to me, Jimmy, coming into this year with the Niners. So whoever's at quarterback, Jimmy G to start the year, I think he'll get the start at the beginning. It's just a question of when, at what point do you see Trey Lance? Kind of like the same thing we're going to see with Chicago this year. How long until we get these first-round draft picks in as the starting quarterback, although it may not happen immediately. So the offensive line should be good. You look at the skill position talent here for this 49ers team. I think it's still going to be fine. I know they lose Kendrick Bourne, but you're going to have a healthy George Kittle at tight end, one of the best in the NFL. Missed 8 games last year, looking to rebound from a bad year, an injury-riddled year. I'm sure he can do that. Deebo Samuel, is a guy that also was out for a period of time last year. I liked what I saw to Brandon Ayuk, at the receiver spot for the Niners. So there's weapons to work with for the 49ers. The offense looks like it should definitely be improved. The defense on the other side, you look at all the, injuries they had last year. Nick Bosa and Dee Ford, those are their 2 edge rushers, Jimmy. They were missing time much of last year. So all of a sudden to get them back, Nick Bosa and Dee Ford is going to be very, very important. Javon Kinlaw, you mentioned him, very, very impressive in his rookie year. When you look at the secondary, they lose Richard Sherman. They lose Akello Witherspoon, but Jason Verrett, was one of the guys that's, even though he's had a lot of injuries in his career, is the one guy that managed to stay healthy last year, played extremely well. There's going to be a little bit of tinkering back there. So if you had to pick one unit on this football team, Jimmy, that I'm concerned about coming into the year, it's the secondary. Just because you got some changes, you're going to have to find some new starters to plug some holes there. Kayvon Williams is good, but, there's going to be some change back there. Fred Warner's one of the top linebackers in the NFL, so that linebacking group led by him, anchored by him, one of the anchors of the defense, too, from a leadership standpoint, should be fine. Just because everything fell apart last year, Jimmy, it's probably going to be that big jump forward this year for the Niners. I didn't bet the win total. I lean over. There's another couple of teams in this division we'll talk about that I'm actually really high on and placed bets on in this division. I like the Niners. I lean over the total, but more than anything, I think ATS-wise, you're going to see a big jump and rebound from them in terms of point spread success throughout 2021.
It's a very tough division they are in, but the easiest schedule in the NFL based on opposition forecasted wins. A nice spot for the Niners for sure. We move on to the team that the Niners are very slightly favored over, and that is the Los Angeles Rams. In 2020, they went 10-6. They have the 14th hardest schedule in the league based on opposition's forecasted wins. To make the playoffs, the Rams are the Rams are minus 230 to make the playoffs. That can't be right. How could that? Sorry, let me just figure this out here. Huge favorites to make the playoffs. I've got them to miss the playoffs at minus 230. That's plus 230. There we go. To make the playoffs, minus 200. To miss the playoffs, plus 230. Season win total, 10.5. The over 10.5 is at plus 110. The under at minus 140. To win the NFC West, plus 187. To win the NFC, plus 550. To win the Super Bowl, plus 1,300. And McVay now in his 5th year as head coach. Kevin O'Connell in year 2 as the offensive coordinator. And we have Raheem Morris in his 1st year as defensive coordinator using a 3-4 scheme. Stafford comes in. Big move. Deshaun Jackson comes in with his speed. Can he stay healthy? And then Tutu Atwell comes in from Louisville, round 2, 57th overall. Is he too small to play in the NFL, as some have said about him? A ton of speed coming in to help Stafford. They lose Goff. That's a plus for them, I think, having Stafford in there. Malcolm Brown, the running back, goes to the Dolphins. Josh Reynolds to the Titans. Gerald Everett, the tight end, to the Seahawks. And safety John Johnson to the Browns. The big thing here with the Rams is they lose 7 assistants to other teams in the offseason. That is huge. McVay always complained that he couldn't open up his entire playbook with Goff under center. Stafford should change that. Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp have been one of the best 1-2 punches we've seen in the league since 2017. Then they had Atwell and Jackson. They expect a big year from Tyler Higbee. Darrell Henderson will get a chance to be the number 1 in the wake of Cam Akers' torn Achilles. There's always been concerns about whether or not Henderson is a 3-down back. Does he have the size, the power? Just 177 carries through 2 seasons. Their offensive line is vulnerable. They did not add a free agent offensive lineman. They didn't draft one. Austin Blythe left in free agency. Brian Allen missed all of 2020 with a knee injury. And Whitworth turns 40 in December, and he's coming off a knee injury. It has to be an enormous concern when you have a quarterback who's not mobile. Last year, the defense was excellent, fewest points and yards in the league. Rams allowed 4.6 yards per play, a third of a yard better than anyone in the NFL. Brandon Staley deserves a ton of credit, and that earned him a head coaching job with the Chargers. So Staley's not the only member of this defense moving on. Safety and defensive play caller John Johnson, slot corner Troy Hill, both signed with the Browns. Lineman Michael Brockers and Morgan Fox aren't around either. They had 17 starts and 11 sacks. And Samson Ebukam signed with the Niners. The Rams drafted 5 players on the defensive side of the ball in 2021, but none of them are expected to start right away. Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey are monsters. We know that. They can be relied upon. Leonard Floyd was re-signed, 10.5 sacks last season. They hope that Sebastian Joseph Day continues his emergence. SoFi Stadium is hosting the Super Bowl this year. Any chance, Babano, that the Rams are playing in it?
I think they could be. This is the team I like to maybe win this division and over the win total. Even though you mentioned a little bit of a tougher schedule than the Niners, but there's questions at the quarterback spot with the Niners, in my opinion. I don't think you've got those questions here with Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford's a good quarterback, and that's why I made this bet. I believe he's a good quarterback, and I think he needed to get out of the stench of Detroit, where things just consistently were poor there. The offensive line was never any good. He never had a really truly great receiving core ever since Calvin Johnson retired many years ago, now Hall of Famer Calvin Johnson. Kenny Golladay was there, but he was always injured. And now I think coming here to the LA Rams, Matthew Stafford's going to be benefiting, just like Jared Goff did, from an elite offensive mind, a good play caller, schemer, game planner in Sean McVay. It's going to help him. And you mentioned the offensive line, some concerns, some older guys, Rob Havenstein, Andrew Whitworth. These are guys that are getting older here on this Rams O-line. You mentioned them losing Austin Blythe. They'll miss him. Brian Allen, though, is they're confident in him taking over that spot on the O-line. I've heard good things. And you still look at it, 4 of the 5 starters from last year, both tackles still back for the Rams. So when you look at it, Jimmy, I still think the O-line will be solid. And Sean McVay can sometimes work around an offensive line that's a little bit shaky. We've seen him do that in the past. And look, Stafford isn't mobile, and neither Jared Goff was. But when Stafford's under some pressure, I find he makes better decisions with the football. He's not chucking the ball into coverage, when he's under pressure like Goff did. And I think that's going to be the big difference here with Stafford with this offensive line of the Rams than what we saw with Jared Goff. The defense, you mentioned it. Brandon Staley was the DC last year. He gets the Chargers head coaching job. But I'm okay with Raheem Morris taking over. He's a good defensive coordinator. I like him a lot more as a DC than a head coach. I think we've seen that in years past. Some guys are just better coordinators. I think that's the case with him. We know Aaron Donald, the leader of this defensive line, he's going to carry them there. They do lose Brockers, but Sebastian Joseph Day, Ashawn Robinson, they're very, very complimentary of the way those two guys have performed in camp early on. The Troy Hill absence in the secondary definitely is concerning a little bit, but you still have Jalen Ramsey. He's a little bit of a risk taker. He's got that gambling mentality sometimes, like we do in that secondary. So it's like feast or famine sometimes if he doesn't make the right read. But you still have Jalen Ramsey, Darius Williams in that secondary for this Rams team. You got a very well coached group. I still think this team is going to be extremely good. And to me, this team had all the pieces in place the last couple of years. And, coaching, the defense, the skill position talent. I mean, Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, Matt Stafford's going to enjoy working with them. But Jared Goff was holding them back because he didn't finish drives. He turned the ball over a few too many times. And if Matt Stafford can protect the football just a little bit better than Jared Goff did, they can turn some of those close losses into wins this year. I think they will. I'm on the Rams not only in the division, Jimmy. I like that NFC future at plus 550 that's on the screen there. The 13-1 to win the Super Bowl in an NFC where I don't think there's a clear-cut dominant team. The LA Rams have as good a shot as anybody in my mind.
Very, very interesting breakdown. We see Stafford playing hurt in the second half of every season, and I'm concerned that this offensive line is not going to be able to protect them. And this division is so tough. Every team capable of making a
best
run.
Division in the NFL coming into the year, in my mind, hands down, top to bottom.
Without a doubt, I would say at this point. Let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks 2020 record 12-4, the 11th easiest schedule in the league based on opposition's forecasted wins. Make playoffs, miss playoffs, minus 120 on each side. Season win total 9.5. The over juiced at minus 140, the under at plus 110. To win the NFC West, plus 280. To win the NFC, 12-1. To win the Super Bowl, 25-1. Year 12 of the Pete Carroll regime sees a new offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron. It's going to be a West Coast offense, and fourth year for Ken Norton, who used the 4-3 scheme. Key additions, Gerald Everett. We talked about the Rams losing him. The Seahawks get him. 2017 second rounder, 417 receiving yards in 2020. Dwayne Eskridge out of Western Michigan, 5'9" speedster. Going to be a useful wideout for the Seahawks. Gabe Jackson, a guard and a big help, hopefully, to Russell Wilson, who has complained nonstop about protection. And then, as you mentioned in the Niners breakdown, Ahkello Witherspoon, who still, to me, needs to prove that he's a top-flight cornerback. They lose Carlos Hyde. We know they expect Rashad Penny to play a big part in this offense. KJ Wright, Shaquille Griffin to the Jaguars, Jaron Reed to the Chiefs. Here we go. There was a ton of heat thrown on Russell Wilson in the second half of last season. Overall, in the year, he throws for 40 touchdowns, two different 1,000-yard receivers. First time since 1995 when Blades and Galloway did it. Lockett and Metcalf should be excellent again this season. No question marks there. Over the first 8 games, the Seahawks led the league in pass play rate at 65%. Russell Wilson had 28 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, 5 300-yard passing games. Over the final 8 games, Pete Carroll went a completely different route. They were 22nd in the league, calling pass plays 57% of the time. Wilson goes for 12 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and a goose egg, 0 300-yard passing games. And Russell Wilson was not happy. He was clearly unhappy in the offseason. He called out the commitment to the run game. He called out the offensive line woes. He publicly lobbied for Dwayne Brown to get an extension that wasn't given to him. He's been sacked 394 times in 9 seasons, 44 per year, and is on pace to be the most sacked quarterback in NFL history. So Gabe Jackson will help that. Gabe Jackson didn't allow a sack all of last season. He'll be lining up right next to Dwayne Brown. That will help. Shane Waldron gets Eskridge and Everett, and a healthy Chris Carson, a healthy Rashard Penny. They clearly believe in them with the release of Carlos Hyde. Defensively, second last in the league last year, allowing 285 passing yards a game. Then they let KJ Wright go. So the question is, will first-round pick Jordan Brooks be able to replace him? They let Shaquille Griffin go with an expectation that DJ Reed will be able to replace him. And how can you have faith in this pass rush? And the answer is that you can't. Carlos Dunlap, the only locked-in starter, look, we know that Jamal Adams is going to help from the strong safety. He led the team in sacks, tied for league in quarterback hits. We know that. They desperately signed Aldon Smith, watch him get arrested 2 days later and subsequently released. They couldn't re-sign Jadeveon Clowney. They bring back Bruce Irvin, but lost him to injury after 2 games. They gave up on Jaron Reed. Their pass rush was bad last year, and I don't see it changing this year. I see their defense being a problem just like last year. Now there's going to be some more comfort for Russell Wilson, but they're going to have to outscore their opponents to win. I do not trust the Seattle Seahawks squad this year. Babano, take it away.
Yeah, they're bet against to me coming into this year. They're the team that's falling in this division because I like the other 3 teams a lot better than Seattle coming into this season. There's concerns that I've got all over the place with the Seahawks on the offensive side of the football. What I do like is the offensive line upgrade. You mentioned Gabe Jackson, Dwayne Brown, the left tackle, was injured at times last year. And you saw the drop in the Seattle protection as soon as he got hurt, Dwayne Brown. Every time he's been out of the lineup, it's like night and day being able to protect that blind side for Russell Wilson. And, he stays healthy. You bring in Gabe Jackson, and all of a sudden those two can really help solidify this O-line. The other starters, are solid with Ethan Posich, Brandon Shell. They're not great O-linemen. They're serviceable. They're manageable. The key is they've solidified the key spots. Bringing in Gabe Jackson, the left tackle, Dwayne Brown, stays healthy. He's still a very good left tackle. So that O-line's better. Russell Wilson was basically ranting and raving and telling everybody and anyone in the Seattle management group that would listen that I need better pass protection. I need a better offensive line coming into this year. And they worked very well to try to address that. I think it's an improved O-line, for sure, compared to what it was last year. It can't be worse. It had to be better, and I think it is going to be better this year, no question about that. You like the receiving core still with Metcalf, Lockett. They're very high on Swain and Dwayne Eskridge as well to help out, be weapons as well in the passing game. They've got Chris Carson, Rashad Penny, same 2 running backs, and with this O-line now being improved, I think you're going to see more balance too. You're going to see them run the football and throw it. They're not going to have to drop back every single time because they couldn't run the football a lick last year. So there's things to like about the offense. I don't see much to like, Jimmy, about the defense. This is a concern for me. They couldn't generate any pressure and get any sort of pass rush last season whatsoever. And what did they do to address that? Yeah, they have Dunlap, but can we count on him to play 17 games this year? I'm not so sure. Your other options are Kerry Hyder, who's been a solid, decent player, run of the mill, but I don't think he's starter material. Darrell Taylor, LJ Collier. You're going to be putting your pass rush on the shoulders of these guys who are all unproven at this point in time. That bothers me quite a bit. The secondary, they lose Quentin Dunbar, Shaq Griffin, who of course now in Jacksonville. DJ Reed and Trey Flowers, they're going to have to be the guys to step up. They added Akella Witherspoon and Trey Brown. But again, are those guys adequate replacements? Because I like Dunbar. I like Griffin. I think they're going to do good in their new teams. I don't know and Jamal Adams, they got him from the Jets. Always injured, though. That's the problem. And you got to count on him now to be healthy for a full season. I'm not sure you can. Really, other in that secondary, I like Quandre Diggs a lot. Everybody else is a gigantic question mark. In my mind, they lost KJ Wright in free agency. I mean, other than Bobby Wagner, I don't think the linebacking core is all that special. This is a team that's going to give up points. They don't have a pass rush. They have one reliable linebacker in Bobby Wagner. They lost 2 cornerbacks that I thought were better than the cornerbacks they're bringing in. I mean, this team's going to give up points. More than anything, Seattle's going to be, from a game totals perspective, week to week, they're going to be an over team to me. I just hope Pete Carroll says, you know what? Let's try to be aggressive. Let's try to put up points on the board weekly. That's not always been his style. It's always been run the football, conservative play calling, churn the clock, time of possession, all that nonsense. Well, that's going to get your ass beat this year because you don't have a defense. You're going to have to be aggressive. You're going to have to let Russell Wilson air it out, and you're going to have to score some points, and you're going to have to score 30-plus a week, in my mind, to have a real good chance at winning football games this year. So I would lean under the win total. Have not bet it because the concern, Jimmy, is they've made an adjustment here. We're talking 12-4 last year. The win total is 9.5. So they've made some adjustment, but I would only look under. But more than anything, from a game totals perspective, and certainly bet against ATS-wise as well for me with Seattle, but more than anything, game totals for Seattle Seahawks games this year, I'll be looking to bet them over the total.
Agreed. And this could be a similar situation, sort of. I mean, I know that 12-4 was a great year for them last year, but a team that will deteriorate in the second half, a team without depth in key positions on defense that will get beaten down, and then they'll be asking for Russell Wilson to do too much, and he'll get beaten down. This is a team where even if you took the under and they come out of the gate 6-2, I don't think that's a lost bet at this point. I think this is a team that will deteriorate. Let's move on to the Arizona Cardinals, an extremely tricky cap right now. And the key here for me, 9th hardest schedule in the NFL based on opponents' forecasted win total. You're in a division with the 49ers with the easiest schedule in the NFL. The 9th hardest schedule in the NFL are the Cardinals. 2020, they went 8-8. Favored hugely to miss the playoffs, -230. To make the playoffs, +180. Season win total at 8.5. The over slightly juiced at -120. The under at -110. To win the NFC West, +550. To win the NFC, +1,600. To win the Super Bowl, +4,000. Cliff Kingsbury in year 3 with this air raid offense. This air raid offense that doesn't throw the ball enough to qualify, in my mind, as an air raid offense. And then Vance Joseph also in year 3. AJ Green comes over from the Bengals. Very excited to see what he can do. James Conner comes over from the Steelers, gives them size because they already have Chase Edmonds, so nice to have size. Rondale Moore picked in the second round, 49th overall out of Purdue. Very fast wide receiver. You get Rodney Hudson from the Raiders, J.J. Watt from the Texans, and then Zaven Collins, who we all fell in love with last year as we bet Tulsa unders, or in games Tulsa played unders. 6'5", 259-pounder, 16th overall draft pick. They lose Larry Fitzgerald, at least, as we expect, and who knows if he decides late to come back for one more. Kenyon Drake gone, and Patrick Peterson over to the Vikings. So the Cardinals closed the season losing 5-7, finished 8-8. They had 2 opportunities to close out the season with a win, could have made the playoffs, couldn't beat the Niners or the Rams. Now we have 2 seasons with Kyler Murray and Kingsbury, 13-18-1, but their offense is clearly improving. 21st in 2019 with 341.7 yards per game, 6th last year at 384.6 points per game. We have a Cardinals team that in 2020 threw 55.8 pass play percentage, 55.8, and an air raid offense you would like to have at 75%. Kyler Murray was second among quarterbacks in rushing yards, which is the reason why those numbers were down, and touchdowns as well. However, 30-plus TD passes. So there are 28 quarterbacks with 30-plus TD passes since he entered the league. And his 46 touchdowns to 24 interceptions is 20th in the NFL and needs to be fixed. A.J. Green and Rondale Moore may be able to do that. Clearly, Keyshawn Johnson and Andy Isabella will drop down the depth chart. DeAndre Hopkins and Green as outside receivers is very exciting. Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore on the inside. Now you have Connor, who, if he can revert back to that Pro Bowl form from 2018, will be a big help, especially being much bigger than Chase Edmonds. You get 3-time Pro Bowl center Rodney Hudson from the Rangers. That's a huge upgrade over Mason Cole, a very, very important position when you have Kyler back there. Their front 7 was tied for 4th in sacks with 48. They generated pass pressure on 25.9% of quarterback dropbacks. That was 4th highest in the NFL. They did that with injuries, just a litany of injuries. Chandler Jones lost week 5 with a season-ending bicep injury. Now Hassan Reddick, 12.5 sacks, and Dennis Gardeck came out of nowhere. Now we know Reddick's moved on to the Panthers, but Jones is expected to be healthy week 1. And now they have J.J. Watt there. They have Budda Baker, Zaven Collins in the middle of the defense, Jordan Phillips and Marcus Golden. The Phillips with the interior pass rusher and an outside linebacker, Marcus Golden. This is a very good team to have -230 to miss the playoffs and +180 to make the playoffs. Wild. How are you going to be, or what are your expectations for the Cardinals this year, Babano?
Yeah, maybe I'm victimized here, Jimmy, by the fact that Arizona's schedule gets to them, because the schedule admittedly is not overly easy for them this year. But from a talent standpoint, I mean, their win total is 8.5. They won eight games last year. I don't see how they're not a better football team this year. I really don't see how they're not a better football team coming into 2021. One of the first season win totals bets I made late spring, early summer was Arizona over 8.5. And I still feel very good about it. Now, does the schedule concern me? Yes. Do these many stories that I've read about low vaccination rates for the Arizona Cardinals bother me a little bit? Yes, of course, because definitely an outbreak could totally sabotage the season for the Cardinals at some point. There's no question. But when I look at this roster, Jimmy, you can't tell me they haven't improved it. I mean, it's terrific to me. Kyler Murray, of course, at quarterback. And what I love, too, about this team, it's year 3 with the same head coach and the same quarterback. And that is usually when you see improvement. That's when you're supposed to see that big leap, that big stride forward. And improvement in the football team. We'll see if they do have it this year. But you look at it. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins now has A.J. Green on the other side. What a 1-2 punch that is. In fact, you go down to Andy Isabella is the 6th receiver on the depth chart right now for Arizona. That's insane because he's actually a pretty solid player. You know, Keyshawn Johnson, Rondale Moore out of Purdue is going to be a big weapon that Cliff Kingsbury is going to love having on this team. Christian Kirk, of course, now one of the best number 3 receivers, if you ask me, in the NFL. You know, with him now falling to the number 3 receiving spot behind Green and Hopkins. Running back group, you know, Chase Edmonds. They bring in James Conner. I don't like James Conner as a starting back, but as a platoon running back, which he surely will be in this offense, I don't mind that one bit. The offensive line looks better. They bring in one of the best starting centers in the NFL in Rodney Hudson. You know, how are you not a better offensive line? That guy is a terrific player. He's going to anchor that O-line. It's going to be a better group. So there should be more lanes for Kyler Murray to do what he does a lot, and that's run the football. But more importantly, why did Arizona not throw the football a ton last year, Jimmy? They didn't trust their O-line enough. I think they can trust that O-line a lot more this year, be able to throw the football, find those receivers, and there is a commitment from everything I've read in training camp that this team does want to throw the football more, and they feel more comfortable and confident in their offensive line being able to pass protect for Kyler Murray to be able to throw the football more. So this offense is loaded on paper. Now we're going to see if they can translate that onto the football field. On the defensive side of the football, that's where the issues have been since Cliff Kingsbury's been there. They were awful in his first year, but they made improvements last year. Their points per game allowed went down. You know, the yardage per game allowed went down. They went from a bottom feeder defense 2 years ago to, I think, middle of the pack last year. And I think they'll be even better than that this year when you look at what they've done. Keep in mind the pass rush, which at times has been spotty. Chandler Jones was injured a lot last year. Marcus Golden. You know, they keep those guys healthy and on the field. That is a ferocious pass rush. You add J.J. Watt to the mix. I think he's motivated. You know, didn't like the way it ended there in Houston. He gets on a better team, a team with a better chance this year of winning. I think that gets him going. Again, injuries are always an issue with him, but I think he's going to be fired up to play hard. They lose Patrick Peterson in the secondary, but I don't mind that. He had a terrible year in my mind last year. He had his worst year, in my opinion, as an NFL cornerback, and they bring in Malcolm Butler. I think that actually is an upgrade, to be honest with you, Jimmy, based on the way Patrick Peterson played last year. I thought he was poor. You know, Byron Murphy, Robert Alford, Darquez Dennard. They've got lots of talent in the pass defense. What about one of the best safeties in the NFL, Budda Baker? You know, look how good this guy's been for the Arizona Cardinals the last couple of years. Playmaker, reading the play, forcing turnovers, running back, pick sixes. I mean, he can do it all for you. The markets to me don't seem to love Arizona as much as I do, Jimmy. But I'm buying in on this team. I like their win total over. I'm on them as a small dark horse in the division at plus 550. And yes, I've got a few bucks as well, NFC and Super Bowl for this team. Yeah, there are things that concern me, but I really like this Arizona team.
And then you'd have to like to make the playoffs at plus 180.
Yes.
Which is
absolutely.
A wild number for the Cardinals. Great breakdown, Babano. Please hit the like and hit the subscribe button. Support us here at Pub Sports Radio. We are so excited about this big NFL season. Tuesday nights, we'll be breaking down all the games, opening lines, and then Sunday mornings, we will have the NFL Pub Hub before each and every Sunday. On behalf of Babano and myself and everybody at Pub Sports Radio, thank you so much for watching and supporting us. And let's have ourselves a big, big football season.